Hey YouTube, here's Heiko. In my driveway we're working on another Nissan Frontier upgrade project and I will take you along. Let's turn the camera around and look at what we're working on. So as I am wanting to improve the trailer capabilities of my truck, I have already done a few things. We have relocated the trailer outlet into the bumper. Here, let me show you. There. That's already done. There's a video for that available. Then I've also wasted my time and tried to install some helper springs made by Ironman 4x4. They are called the Load Plus LP2 and they don't work, they don't fit, don't buy it. And so I returned those and now we're looking at a set of Sumo springs. They are made by Super Springs International. This one here is the part number SSR61240 and the installation instruction also covers the 47. So the difference between the 40 and the 47 is the hardness of the this polyurethane foam material. The 40 is the softest, that will barely interfere with normal riding conditions, so it will feel like you are still driving a normal suspension vehicle. If you put the 47 in, it will be a little rougher. And then they have an even harder one, which is 50, I want to say. It's yellow in color. Those are the hardest ones. Those are really only advisable if you have some sort of camper on your truck all the time, or you have lots of off-road gear that you're carrying around, maybe a rooftop tent or something like that. Then you probably want to go for either the black one or the yellow one. Since mine is driven as a daily driver with only a little camper shell on it, some junk in the truck bed, so I went for the softest ones that will still give you almost like an OEM stock ride. So these blue ones will only interfere with suspension when you start loading your vehicle down, you put a heavy trailer on it, or you really start packing up your truck bed. And they will support, I read somewhere, up to 1,000 pounds. So that's probably reasonable for a compact sized truck like a Frontier is. So I didn't want to make it too stiff when I'm just driving around, and I wanted a little bit of support when I'm actually putting a trailer on here. I read the installation instructions that come on this sheet. They are pretty generic. They don't give you any torque values, so you will have to get the Haynes manual out for your vehicle and look up what the torque spec for the bolts and nuts that you are taking off are. So they say it's pretty easy. We'll see, yeah? So box here, parts here. Let me put you on a stand and then we're going to prep for the installation. So what they want you to do is to take your vehicle really not off the ground, just have it sit on your wheels, and then you're going to go to one side of the axle and take the axle U-bolts that mount the leaf springs onto the axle off. Take the original bump stop that's mounted right there out, and then just install this bracket, and then you tighten it down again, and then you go to the other side, install this bracket as well, and then once you're done with that, you're going to lift your vehicle off the ground so that the axle hangs freely, so you get the most amount of space between the axle and your frame rail. And then you're going to take the Sumo spring. They also give you some blue Loctite. You put some blue Loctite on the bolt here and then just hand tighten them on there. The Loctite will keep it from coming loose, and you just tighten it up like an oil filter by hand, and that's pretty much it. So let's go under the vehicle, take some stuff loose, take those two mounting brackets with us so we can install both of those. I already got some tools. I also looked up my torque value here. So in my case it's 54 foot-pounds or 73 Newton meters for the U-bolt nuts. All right, let's do that. So you see the leaf spring, here's the axle, there are the U-bolts, or at least one of them. And then here at the bottom you can see the 4 nuts that go onto the U-bolts. So you take those 4 loose, then you can lift your U-bolt up, and then this here, that there is the original bump stop. And what this Sumo spring does is literally just replace the original bump stop, and then up there is where it will touch your frame rail. So, and you are replacing the bump stop, and it also has a steel bracket that's clamped under those U-bolts. So let me set you up and then start working. So here we go. I got a breaker bar and a 19mm socket. Take those loose. So they say to just do that on the ground with the wheels on the ground, which makes sense. So the weight is resting on the springs. Nothing should be moving. I have the vehicle on Rhino rams to get it off the ground a little more. You have a little bit more space. I have tire chokes on the front wheels to make sure that nothing rolls away. Now stuff's starting to fall apart. That's the bottom plate going around the axle tube. And now we have the U-bolts loose, and you can just take them out like that. And the second one. So nothing should be moving really. And then here we got the original bump stop. Just to give you an idea what that size difference is, let me grab one. So just to give you an idea, this is what's going on here. Replacing this one that will only touch if you're like absolute in full deflection of your suspension to this one. I read somewhere the bracket is a little wider on those Sumo springs, that it might not, yeah, see the U-bolts, shouldn't be a problem. I'm just gonna grab a rag and clean up all the gunk and dirt and whatnot that's sitting on top of the leaf spring. So I took that apart again. We're only installing this bracket for now. Let me grab a rag. So here we go. Just cleaning up some of the dust and dirt, especially on top of the leaf spring. That's where under those bump stops and pieces that go over the leaf spring, there's going to be a lot of dust and grime collecting over the years. There is the center nut bolt. There's a stud going from the saddle that the spring sits on. Here, let me see if I can stick you in there. See that up there? That's a stud sticking out with a nut. And the original bump stop here just had a little cutout at the bottom, right here where that would go. And then the new bracket is has this step in it, so we shouldn't have any problems putting that over. So we're putting that on. I'm going to grab our leaf springs again and hang them on that new Sumo spring bracket. Oh, that's wrong. It goes inside of the parking brake line. There you go. Second one, and they are pretty clean. There's nothing really going on here. So we're just gonna put the second one up there. pretty tight here with brake lines and brake hoses and whatnot. So now we already have the bracket on there with the two. Let's see if we can see. There you go. Good. And now we're just going to put the bottom bracket back over the clean that up a little bit too. Over the U-bolts. Then grab a couple of those nuts. Okay, so I have two nuts on there. $19mm socket. Remember, this is not an American truck, this is Japanese, so it's mostly metric. And I guess you kind of have to line this up top so that the bolt that sticks out of the top of the leaf spring is somewhat in the middle of the bracket. So your U-bolts all line up and are straight down, vertical position and whatnot. I guess Sumo Spring Company or the Super Spring International, they kind of make very universal parts. So these Sumo Springs here, they are the type that goes right on top of the axle body. They also make versions where you can just, there's another bump stop over here on this side that can also be replaced, but then the Sumo Spring would touch somewhere in the middle of the leaf spring and not over the axle, which I don't find very appealing. So I bought the slightly more expensive version that has the seal bracket. So now we have that on there and we have the bottom bracket on there. I guess you guys could tell me, is the bolt in the middle or not? Because you can slide it back and forth a little bit. So with my head between my spare wheel and the axle, I can actually see that the stud on top of the bracket here sits right on top of the stud that's coming out of the axle. So I think we're good. Now we're just gonna grab my torque wrench, 74 Newton meters. Oh, here we go. There you go. Goodness gracious. That's a good workout. There you go. There you go. There you go. All right, so we have the first one torqued. Now I'm gonna grab a Sumo spring just to show you something. So it will not fit in between. Oh, actually, it fits in between the frame rail and the bracket, but you wouldn't be able to screw it on. So you have to lift the vehicle up and get it off its wheels, axle hanging free, so that you get enough space to screw those on. But yeah, so far so good. So far so good. Now we just have to repeat this on the other side, but I spare you the agony. I'll just do that off camera, and then we're going to do the install of the spring. All right, see you then. So this is the other side. Bracket is on, bolt and the bolt up top line up with each other. The U-bolts are torqued to, what, 53 foot-pounds or 73 Newton meters. And I, instead of taking my vehicle off the rims, I just put a hydraulic jack on one side and just slightly lifted it so that the distance between the frame and the spring is large enough so you can stick this in here and get this there and start screwing that down. And then, as I understand, you just tighten it up like a, let me do that real quick by hand with two hands. So there you go. It's installed, it's bolted down, it's torqued, Loctite, and the blue Sumo spring bump stops, they touch nicely in the middle of this pad that's welded onto the frame. Same on the other side, bolted down. And then they say to gently lower the vehicle down, and then after 200 to 500 miles retorque the U-bolts and register for the warranty for your Super Springs International part. This has a lifetime warranty, so if they ever wear out, break, crack, fall into pieces, you can get in touch with Super Springs International and get a new pair. So let's go for a quick test ride. I wash my hands real quick, and then we're going to drive around the neighborhood and see if I can, you know, subjectively detect any kind of difference, feel. Maybe it might even sit a little higher because the Sumo springs are in contact with the frame rail, so they are supporting the frame already, even in neutral position with no load on it. So let's try it out. All right, doing a quick little test drive here around my neighborhood loop. It's exactly a mile long, has nice little bumps and lumps in the road, a couple of dips, just to see if anything makes noise back there. Oh yeah, and it's definitely, so when it comes to swaying or leaning, kind of a lean angle in a turn, the rubber, well, it's not rubber, it's polyurethane foam, really supports the vehicle. So it kind of takes over two jobs. It's giving you support for heavier load, but it also inhibits swaying instead of installing a sway bar, which has its inherent downsides. When you install a sway bar on the drive axle, on the rear axle, and then you're going through a turn, that means the outside wheel gets loaded more than the inside wheel. The sway bar connects both sides, will ultimately lift the inside wheel off the ground, or at least unload it, so which doesn't help with traction. So in this case here, two independent pieces take over the job of the sway bar, and it definitely makes it a little stiffer, and it's swaying less as I'm doing a little S-turns here, a little zigzag line. Now we're going around a turn. but I can definitely tell that there's something more than the leaf springs supporting the vehicle. So it's probably very subjective if you like it or not, or if you even want to go stiffer, if you want to go with a black or even the yellow version. I think the yellow version is more geared towards vehicles that are equipped maybe with a flatbed or with some sort of toolbox equipment stuff that you have on the back, or you're driving a truck around with a welder installed on the back. So you should definitely do your homework and decide which color you want. Blue is the softest, black is medium, and yellow is really hard. So for me it works, makes no noise, nothing is impacting the frame rails like on the Load Plus LP2 by Ironman 4x4. So don't buy those. And I'm pretty happy with those Sumo springs so far. We haven't towed anything, but next time I have a trailer here on the hitch, I will maybe give you a little update on this. Alright guys, see you in the next video. If you like this, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. See you. Bye. So that was 200-pound gorilla jumping on the tailgate, just so that you guys saw the bounce a little bit. All right, that's really it now.